Robbie, hello. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Trey. Super excited.
So you've had a really interesting journey to get to where you are now. Can you take me back to the turning point that sort of led you down this path that's led to inward breathwork?
Yeah, totally. There's been many. It's always a long, winding road, which entrepreneurship can be. But the very start of the mental health journey, I was always a seeker. Even in high school, I did a thesis project on meditation. I was reading meditation books. And this is before there were even yoga studios in a city. It was like very strange. At least the city I grew up in was a small city outside of Toronto. There was nothing like this, and was interested. I was reading like Carlos Castaneda, strange books, but never took it too seriously. And around 24, I started a company. At 28, had a pretty big failure. So it was a global telecom company. We'd had many dozens of employees and had raised a bunch of money, and my family had invested, friends had invested, personally I had invested, and I spent 4 years grinding at that business, and it didn't end up succeeding. And
What,
as a
what was it
result, I went
exactly?
through. So it was a system on a SIM card that allowed you to provision virtual identities. So you would be in Canada, you would travel to the UK, we would provision you a Vodafone identity, and you wouldn't pay roaming fees. This is in
Mm,
2010. Tech companies and like doing startups is just getting started as a thing. And I was in Toronto, where the community was really small at the time. We're building like pretty big vision, and we could give a super wealthy person the SIM card and they would travel, and then it would send them a text. You just saved $700 on that phone call, because at the time roaming was insane. Like
yeah.
it was $5 for a meg of data, and just like using a BlackBerry, no crazy apps. And over time, roaming prices just declined much faster. I made tons of mistakes. It was my first like real company. I made hiring mistakes. I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't know about lean startup, which is this approach that build something for somebody, make sure they love it, try to do it as cheaply as possible, build like the minimum viable product. And in this case, it could have been just building the software on the SIM card, using iPhone 4 users who were going from Toronto to the UK and only having one carrier grade partnership. And like we went all out, we built the billing system, the software, and we wanted it to work in every phone and sell it in different regions. And
Yeah.
so it was just trying to take on too much, and the spend was too great. So really interesting learning lessons. I didn't realize that at the time, learning how to build a team, how to assess a product, how to talk to customers, how to raise money from investors. I did every single role at that company. But at the time when it failed, it was kind of the last man standing. It was really difficult for me to feel like a complete failure. And I only did a
Mm,
startup in the first place because I wanted to be successful. It felt in my
mhm.
heart like if I'm not successful, I'm a nobody. People won't like me. I won't be able to afford things. I won't be safe. Females won't like me. This is at 24. These are big
Sure.
feelings and important feelings. And so I went through a period for 2 years, struggling really hard. At the same time, I was drinking pretty heavily on the weekends and doing a lot of drugs. And I would do
What
that
were you
just
actually
to.
doing, like professionally during this time? This is 2 years after you
So this is
decided
during the
to shut things
company.
down?
This is like the last
The
two,
last few
so it was
years.
a 4 year journey. The last 2 years were like very difficult for me
Hmm.
personally. Also seeing my friends like becoming, building their careers, becoming successful. And
Hmm.
it was the first time I dealt with a really big failure, to the point I'd have dreams of being in an office and someone yelling at me and failing and like wake up. Like it was crazy. And at that point, company ends. I'm living in my parents' basement. Don't know what I'm going to do. They're kind of like, hey, what are you going to do? And I'm like, wow, this is a strange skill set I have. I'm like this generalist. What can I do with this? And not feeling super confident. Like at that time was afraid to even just reach out to strangers. And now that's become my superpower. So it's really funny because I was pretty scared to put myself out there.
Yeah.
And as an entrepreneur, you definitely have to put yourself out there. And I decided like I want to change. And so I knew about meditation. I was like, I should heard from a friend, like, oh man, you think you meditate, you need to try this Vipassana retreat. And so he had a call with me, explained it. I decided to move to Israel for an amount of time, just completely get out of Toronto, have a new surroundings. And I knew one of our investors who lived there, and he wanted me to come look at deals with him. And so I moved to Israel. I'm not Jewish. I don't speak Hebrew. I lived in a crazy town, like just on the border of Gaza, where there was like missile alarms. And
Yeah.
then during Christmas, I didn't want to pay for the flight home. So I decided to do a Vipassana retreat. And I did it. It ended in New Year's. And for people who don't know what that is, it's a meditation retreat, 10-day retreat where you spend 10 hours in meditation, informal meditation. There's 2 meals in the morning, vegetarian meals, and it's completely silent the entire 10 days. And what I wasn't expecting was how physically demanding sitting is, like very, very intense experience. And for the first time, it started to bring up, like, I have ADHD also, hence the drive for pleasure, seeking materials, experiences like work, extreme sports, drugs. And meditation was the first thing that kind of helped me to move out of sensation, stimulation, and the mind. And it was the first time I felt it. And so, you think of your practice before, 10 minutes a day for 2 years, that's 100 hours. So it's like one Vipassana is just, you're getting all those reps in a very short time. You can really feel what it's like to get into a deep meditative state. And for many people, if they want to try meditation, I say that's the best thing you can do is go and do this, because within the 10 days, you'll feel a taste of where you want to go. And it will give you the courage and the knowledge of this is available to me. And once you feel that, it's like very powerful. And so that kind of started my wellness journey. And then I just started stacking on. So the next thing was psychedelic medicines, which I learned about on that retreat. I actually went with a friend from the retreat to try LSD at a Israeli campus in Haifa, which is a random place. So I drove up in the morning, 4 a.m., completely dark, met these 2 people on campus. We walked out into the woods, took the LSD, watched the sunrise, and they didn't speak any English. And so for me, I'm like, just in the woods in Israel alone, what am I doing here? I'm really thinking those things, like, what am I actually doing here? And what am I doing with my life? And pretty profound experience, like more fun. It was very much like just enjoying the different sensations, the smells, the tastes. We had some candy and fruits that were fantastic. And I wrote an article about that experience, which I could put in the show notes. So that was really cool. And then from there, my life started to change. I started to think more around, hey, how perhaps alcohol and sobriety would be a better path. And I looked it up online, I researched, I found ayahuasca. I booked a retreat to Peru, went down to Peru. And this is before like How to Change Your Mind and a lot of the mainstream.
And how do these things actually come up during the Vipassana retreat? Was there a communal aspect to it, or you literally didn't say a word to anybody for 10 days, but you were just around a group that ended up bonding with after?
So it's like 180. It's so funny, man. It's such a crazy experience. It's 180 people in the one I went to in this place called the Bet. And you are instructed not to look anyone in the eye, not to gesture to anyone, not to communicate at all. And how that sets the tone is like you sit down, the person beside you is not going to talk to you while you're eating, and you're not going to talk to them. So there's no desire to even do that. And it's keeping you in such a state of presence and focus. It's not distracting you. So when you talk, you're thinking, what is this person going to think of me? What should I be saying? All kinds of thoughts are triggered, and you're trying to reduce external sensation as much as possible. And I remember very intense emotions come up, and you also start to realize you're not in control. Like we think event happens and I feel an emotion. So, I get fired from my job, I'm sad. It's not actually the case. Emotions come up and then we attribute action to them, attribute causes. So in the brain, the emotions can arise first. And so you're sitting in the meditation, it's like this intense anger is boiling up, like very intense, or sadness, and people are crying. And like, where are these emotions coming from? There's no sensation. What's happening in your brain? It's like, I've heard this on a lot of podcasts, but closing the tabs of the mind. If you think of your mind as it's like a Chrome browser, and just one by one, like processing these emotions that are coming up. And I was in my room, and we shared a room as a first-time student, and the roommate's showering, and in my head, how dare this guy shower? It's so loud. Like he doesn't respect my meditation time. Like getting so pissed, and I don't even know the person. So the other cool thing is that you meet people, but you don't know them. You don't even know their name. And so you're looking at these people you see for 10 hours, like walking, and your mind makes up stories. It's like, oh, that person must be a soccer player from Brazil. And then you find out it's like a doctor from Italy, and you're like, whoa. And you just realize your mind is always doing it. It's always making judgments, assigning personalities, assigning narratives. And so when you change your mind state that much, it just gives like such a cool window into existence and presence. So that was the guy, my roommate, who I was so pissed at. And I actually, like, the last day you're able to talk to each other. And for the last day, you do what's called a metta meditation. It's a loving kindness. And so you're just imagining, you're feeling so amazing, just thinking about love and feeling empathy for others, feeling empathy for the country, the city, like everything around. And all 150 people are doing this for hours and hours. And so the vibration in the room, when you finish, it's like, oh, we just made it through what's for some people one of the hardest things they've ever done. And then you've just been like filling your heart with these feelings of love and gratitude. And then you talk to everyone, you're like giving people hugs. It's like you've known them forever. So it's such a cool experience. Wow. So we met after that, and he was like, oh, if you've tried this, the psychedelic medicines can take you to the same space. And I really didn't know much about using these therapeutically with intention. And so that was the first time I'd heard, okay, we're going to do this with intention, which is pretty cool.